So good afternoon, good morning, or very good morning. Thank you all for joining us. We have our wonderful DMC, Jean-Michel Jefferson, the founder of Aipara in New Zealand. And Jean-Michel, you're going to take us into, we all know about the Maori, but we cannot know as much as you do. So we're looking forward to hear more.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned before we started, I'm going to try and keep this one short because my last webinar overran, and I'm mindful that people have schedules to run. So forgive me. I'm going to give you a small glimpse into the Maori world, and I'm going to move relatively fast in order to give you time to come back with questions. So is my screen being shared at the moment, Dominique?
Ready? Yeah.
It is, cool.
Yeah.
So what we see here is one of my carvings. It's a Maori carving made out of greenstone. So Maori and greenstone are synonymous in New Zealand. Greenstone is our jade. Maori call it pounamu, and New Zealanders who have a fairly direct attitude to naming call it greenstone. It's known as the soul stone of New Zealand, and the carvings. Carving is a very, very big thing in the Maori world, where there was no written language in Maori culture. So language was either recited, or sorry, history was either recited or kept in carvings and symbols. And you can see, I believe that Maori carving is absolutely beautiful, some of the nicest designs in the world. And part of the reason is that they are meaningful symbols. This is meaningful. When I talk to Maori chiefs, they talk about tattoos in general, and they say, oh, those are just pictures. They don't mean anything. Whereas the Maori stuff actually means something, and you can see that here. And this particular jade, there are half a dozen different types of jade in New Zealand. This particular one is called toto weka. And toto weka in Maori means the blood of the weka. The weka is a sort of duck-like bird. Blood of the weka, you can see these little red flecks coming through the greenstone here. So it's actually one of my favorite types of greenstone, and I've got to admit to many addictions in my life, I have a greenstone addiction as well. Okay, so Maori, where did they come from? So the received history, which was the history that was given to missionaries when Europeans first arrived, was part of the story. Now, Maori respected the missionaries because they were obviously educated people, and they gave them a lot of the story, which was that various canoes, which we know as waka here, various waka arrived. They were saying 600 years ago, and then they refined that to 800 and so on. But in Maoridom, because there was no written language, information can be kept back and held sacred. And so some information was kept back from these missionaries and has been published over the last 20 years. So about 20 years ago, people started saying it's about time the world knew the full history of Maori. It still hasn't made it into our history books. It still hasn't made it into many people's heads. So if you go onto a mainstream tour in New Zealand, especially the ones run by young Maori, they might only know part of this history, not the full history. So on the South Island, so you can see here the moves. So you've got to move from Taiwan and further. Some people track it back to India and further back to Egypt from this way. And then over this way, you've also got another link which goes to Rapa Nui, which is known as Easter Island, then goes over to South America. Very, very interesting. And this is straying into the spiritual side of things. There's a lake, a very well-known lake in South America called Lake Titicaca. And people think, where did that name come from? Well, actually, funnily enough, the titi and the kaka are two New Zealand birds, Maori birds. Also, the earliest potatoes in New Zealand have been traced genealogically back to South America. So that there was travel from South America to New Zealand. I've met some Chileans and those Chileans have felt very much like Maori to me. So there are links. And some people say there were also Celtic links from Maori to the early Celts who traveled. And there's stories of ships arriving from Egypt. So a lot of interesting backstory, especially when we go beyond the accepted mainstream history. And mainstream these days is everywhere starting to become part of the story. Um, Now, very, very interestingly, the guys that came from Easter Island, they were coming to one particular place in New Zealand called Castle Hill, and to the west coast. And part of what they were doing was finding what they called the Godstone. Um, Castle Hill was the place called birthplace of the gods. So they knew about this, and they took this enormous journey in these small craft to get to New Zealand for spiritual purposes and in order to find this greenstone. So, like I was saying, this greenstone and Maori are very closely interlinked. So, whatever we accept in terms of when New Zealand started thousands of years ago, or even further back than that, what we know as Maori in New Zealand is the amalgamation, the combination of everyone who has been there previously. What a surprise. It's like every other country in the world. Um, and so a lot of the traditions, a lot of these roots are still here. And it's a lot more complicated and a lot more interesting than the accepted history of everyone arrived on a canoe about 800 years ago. Okay, very warm culture, musical, humorous, fun to be with. And in terms of our clients, when we get the client feedback, there's two front runners in terms of their favorite experiences in New Zealand. Number one is Maori, and number two is helicopters over Fiordland, which is the picture behind Dominique, which is stunningly beautiful. Um, so, yeah, Maori, very, very important. For me, it's a particular passion as well, as you're probably seeing. Okay, really, really quick. This has been debated. What's in front of us now has been debated for decades. But and apologies again for skating over it. But the reason that the Maori culture is so strong at the moment in New Zealand is because of this particular treaty. So this treaty was signed in 1840 between Maori and the English. The English had no interest in New Zealand because it didn't have any good stuff that they could plunder, like rubies or diamonds or gold or anything. They found gold later. But when they heard that the French were interested in New Zealand, they quickly sent the Royal Navy and put an agreement together with the Maori. So it was an anti-French blocking move, which is quite interesting. Um, so they signed this treaty in 1840 with a duration of 150 years. That's the important thing. It had a duration and it was a legal document. Okay. What happened between 1840 and 1990? It was New Zealand likes to believe that they were nice and treated Maori very well, and we weren't nearly as bad as various other people in the world and protected their rights and so on, which is actually a load of rubbish. What actually happened was a normal colonization process where Maori were marginalized, where the language was they were trying to eradicate the Maori language, where choice bits of land were taken by provincial authorities, and it was a normal colonization process. Okay, because it was slightly later than some other countries, the Europeans had evolved a little bit by then, and we were close to the time of the anti-slavery movement in the UK, for example. And so people in the UK were agitating to actually be nice, whereas people who were sitting in New Zealand were saying, "Oh, that's a nice bit of land. I wouldn't mind it for myself." Um, and so there was a lot of the ills of colonization happened. So, 1990, Maori turned up to a court of law with this document and said, "Oi, look, this is now due. And by the way, you haven't held true to this. So we want to find out what we can do about it under this legal system." And it was found that they had a case. And so a tribunal was established called the Waitangi Tribunal. And this was there to redress the wrongs to particular tribes. Now, very, very difficult. Difficult because the treaty was in two languages, Maori and English, and the two translations or the two original languages didn't sync. There were some key issues that weren't translated properly either way, which led to misunderstanding, grey zone, and so on. And in those cases, it's usually the weaker side that loses. And Maori had fewer cannons. Actually, they're very good at guerrilla warfare, but that's a whole, that's another half hour on guerrilla warfare here. Anyway, so going back to this treaty, so what happened at that point is assets started being returned to Maori. For example, half the fishery quotas around New Zealand were returned to Maori almost immediately. Now, this started bringing capital into the Maori world, and Maori invested that capital back into their culture. So you had a couple of lost generations that lost their language and lost their culture and so on. But back home in the villages, what we call marae, a lot of the culture was kept alive, and this capital breathed life into it. There was a Maori TV channel which got off to a rocky start, and people were pointing the finger and saying, "You see, they can't run a TV channel." Then they brought in a clever manager. Every culture has not clever managers and clever managers. They brought in a clever manager, and lo and behold, our normal European TV channels are a load of rubbish with reruns and fairly low-grade TV. And the high-grade channel is the Maori channel, which has very good documentaries from around the world and is intellectually has got the high ground. Again, digressing. So that now it's seen that there is a strong Maori capital base, and what they're calling now the brown dollar in New Zealand, and people are marketing to it. And what's happened is a resurgence of Maori. There's Maori schools that teach Maori. There's one old guy who was part of the lost generation who 20 years ago was talking to me, and he was saying that they went to Maori schools back in the day, and there were these other schools that said whites only. So yeah, we had apartheid here. And he was on his way to his own school, and he was looking at this school that said whites only and saw Indians going in from the subcontinent of India, Indians going into the white school, and they thought, hang on, they don't look terribly white to me. So we had all that sort of rubbish going on. Okay, so moving on, there's been a huge resurgence in Maori, and the European side were not all good, but they weren't all bad. There were plenty of good people. There were plenty on the European side who married into Maori tribes. There's been a huge amount of intermarriage. You talk to most Maori these days, and they will have an element of English. They'll have an element of Scottish. They'll have an element of Irish. Those were the three main British ethnicities that arrived here. And Yugoslavs went up north, so you get ones who are part Yugoslav too. Very interesting. And American whalers married into Maori tribes from the 1700s onwards. So a lot of fascinating intermarriage as well. It helps that Maori physically are very attractive people. So there was an impetus, especially for all these guys a long way from home, to marry into Maori tribes. Some people were cynical and married into Maori tribes because Maori tribes owned hundreds of thousand acres of land and so on. Others did it for love. Others truly appreciated the culture. Bit of everything, like anywhere. Okay, moving on. Okay, so what does that mean now? Moving on to tourism for normal tourists in New Zealand. It's really weird. Most mainstream New Zealand tourist companies are run by European people and European New Zealanders who in the past have not been that empathetic to Māori. So what it gives rise to is a sort of show culture. And this is what people go to see. It is authentic. These are Māori and so on, but it is a show. And you can see there's groups going there. And for me, that wasn't the essence of Māori, because my experience of Māori was really warm, gentle, deep, personal, lovely people. And you don't get that in a show. And so we started looking around for interesting people who could tell a full Māori story on a private basis to clients with a brain. And which most of our clients are. Well, that's unfortunate. Most people actually have a brain. I'm being a bit naughty there. Okay. So we started looking into things. Once we started looking into things, we found that our name was important. And we'd chosen this name on the basis of a place up north in the north of New Zealand, and a place called Ahipara. Um, Beautiful surf break, lovely sun, feet firmly in the Maori world, totally offbeat. And we thought, yeah, that sounds like us. That sounds like a good name. And the name had various connotations. Ahi para, ahi fire, para bay, the Bay of Fire, when they used to collect fire. Another one, ahi campfire, and para, the juices left after a feast has been cooked on a campfire. So the campfire of plenty, a very welcoming place. And the final one, which I really loved, ahi ahika, the spark of life, that which makes us eternal, and para, the sanctuary. So it's quite a special place. And this is where there were some Yugoslavs as well up here. And in each community, you have marae, which are Maori. Yeah, some people call them villages. They're not really. They're like a community center because no one actually lives on a marae. You have on a marae normally a meeting house, which you can see here. You have an eating house, which is over here to the left. And then you can have a school or something. So that's what it is, like a community center. And so when we worked out that we were linked to this senior marae up in Ahipara, we thought, oh dear, we need to go and ask them permission to use our name. So we went up and asked for permission to use our name. So back in the day, so we did this 25 years ago, this was unheard of, that a European company would connect in this very deep way with Maori. And that was the start of our journey. And that was what gave us the credentials to speak to Maori up and down the country, and them to realize that we were treating their culture with honor, and them to say, okay, we will take your clients and we will show them things. Because our Maori guides are not guides. They don't work in tourism. They're real people, like a lot of the people who we present to our clients. They're what we call subject matter experts, who have a fantastic time with clients, like a winemaker or a helicopter pilot or so on. So they don't work in tourism, but they showcase their culture for our clients. Okay, so again, homing in on what we do with clients. Um, the main guy we started with is off the cards at the moment. I've got to mention him because we started with him, and in the Maori world, you have to mention people. Hone Mihaka up north. He's moved away from tourism. He introduced me to this man, Delaney Brown. So this is Delaney here and here and here. Phenomenal guy. He's a master carver, and a world-leading master carver. He has refused carvings to A-listers because he believes them ethically unsound. So this guy has got a tremendous integrity. Also, in his carvings, he um, he pushes things further. So in a Maori tribe, the carver is second only to the chief because, like I mentioned, there's no written history. So history is kept in the carvings. And who does the carvings? The carver. So the carver is the keeper of history, the keeper of tradition, the keeper of knowledge. And what Delaney has done is he's taken these carvings and he's brought them into the modern world. So phenomenal, based absolutely in authentic culture, but moving because everything moves, but moving in the right way. And with the current move, Maori recognized the current move in the world to the divine feminine. And so when he was putting his latest carving together, which was with phenomenal, 30-foot high, like a totem pole, on the waterfront of Taupo, a beautiful city in the center of the North Island. He was talking to an elder and said, our carvings, we always have a man at the top. And this guy said, yeah. He said, is that law, or can we have a female at the top? And the elder said, oh, I don't know. We've never really thought of that. We've just always done it this way. So on top of this carving, he's got two females. So the carving relates back deeply. It relates across to the cousins in the Pacific, and it brings the divine feminine forward. So it's a living, breathing thing, and we can get him to take our clients to that carving and look at it. When he's done previous carvings, some of our clients have been lucky enough to be in the country, and we've got them in the carving shed, and we've put a chisel in their hands, and they've actually contributed a little bit to the carving. So like these guys, we've been working with them 20 plus years. They're friends. We talk to them and we say, okay, this client's really interested in weaving. Yep, we get a weaving specialist in on the same day. Oh, these guys are really interested in food. That's another story, the food story. So this guy, Delaney, because of personal relationships as well, and because they want to be sure of who they're getting, he only works with us. And we do the Porphyry, which is a spiritual welcome. And again, to talk about the Porphyry would take me half an hour on its own, so I'm not going to. There's information on our website about it. But suffice to say, it is a compelling spiritual and physical meeting of people. You can see a warrior here just coming through the forest. It's quite exciting. You can see here the elements of the challenge, here another element of the challenge, and here the ceremony afterwards with the prayers to the gods and the welcomes. He's running the ceremony on that day. He's got a carving done by the same guy as mine here. This is a Hay Tiki, a protector in whalebone. And that's another story. Whalebone vibrates very highly, keeps the vibrations, high spiritual energy, very good for guardianship. So Delaney, phenomenal. And previous Mr. Universe, so you can see he's good eye candy. He's a lovely, lovely guy. And a day which is full and really quite refreshing. The Porphyry that we do, the meeting, is expensive because these are top grade people who we pull out of their day jobs, and so we've got to pay for each individual. So it's a big ask for just a couple. But when you've got a family of 4 or a family of 6, it becomes much more reasonable. Otherwise, we just go for the single day with Delaney. And he also can take people to spiritual sites in the area. Which is the subject of the next webinar. Talking about how good people are, this guy here, he is the multi-time winner of our quarterstaff, the Taiaha there, championship in New Zealand. He's phenomenal. They call him the Lizard because you don't see him strike. He's so fast. Another story. Okay, so that's Delaney in Taupo. Phenomenal day, very rich, very rewarding. Then in the same region, you've got this bloke here, Tom. He's a close personal friend, again, only works with us. Part of the reason these guys only work with us is because they know they're going to get the right clients and the clients are going to be briefed properly. And so they come with the right intention and the day runs really well for everybody. Another part of the reason they work with us is that in the early years, we would come up with all this innovation and then some people would go to other agents and say, can you copy this? And they would try and copy it. So we asked these guys just to make themselves only available to us. And so they said yes. Tom, brilliant guy. So I was talking to Delaney one day, and we had a client who wanted to do some hunting. And so I said to Delaney, have you got someone here who wants to do some hunting? We can do normal hunting in New Zealand everywhere. But I want to do Maori style hunting because it's just deeper. And he said, yeah, we've got this guy up the road. So I met Tom 20 years ago. Family friend, been to my kids' 18th, 21st, turning up here tomorrow. And it's just me and him because my wife's away. So we're going to be hitting the bar and talking up new plans. What he does, he's got a 4,000 acre Maori block of land way up in the middle of nowhere, and he does food. Again, on our website, there's an ebook, there's video and so on, which can go into more detail. But you can see there the piko piko, which is the frond at the center of the flax, which is edible and quite nice. They call it Maori asparagus. I was going to say asperge. I'm getting my French mixed up with my English. And here you have the titi I was referring to earlier, which is known by New Zealanders as the mutton bird. It's a seabird, a sooty shearwater. And it's a bit like a combination, again, showing my French side, of confit de canard and anchovies. So a very very salty and really quite delicious. And you would eat it. You would eat some wild pork, for example, and then you'd have a little bit of this just to cut across the wild pork, and then have some vegetables. And so you spend the day with him cooking in the middle of nowhere. He's also a search and rescue tracker, so he can teach people how to track. And in the past, we've taught people how to hunt Māori style ethical hunting, only cull hunting, taking out the beasts that need to be taken out, and donating the meat to people who can no longer go out hunting. So absolutely, totally ethical hunting, Māori style. And we've done many other things with Tom over the years. That's the other thing with these guys, they've become close friends. When we get briefed on a client, when we get a deep enough briefing, we can think, oh, we can do something we've never done before. To give you one example, I had one client who was Bulgarian, and they wanted to meet to understand Maori in the modern world. And so I just smiled and didn't say anything and thought, oh, we've got this guy, because I had a friend. And I contacted this friend who used to run the marketing for Auckland Museum, and asked him if he would have dinner with this guy. And he said, yeah, not a problem. And so no money changed hands. We didn't charge the client because I was just too keen to get it done. And I sent a case of wine to the friend as a thanks for doing it. And they turned up and had dinner and had a lovely time. Why was it interesting? This guy was a successful Maori businessman who had retired. He was in the ad game, and his mother was Maori and his father was Bulgarian. So we absolutely got this client. And again, we've got such a depth of contacts. It's the sort of thing that we can do. Our third guy that I'm going to talk about in detail today, he's down on the west coast of the South Island. I mentioned the Maori that came all the way from Easter Island, from Rapa Nui. He is descended from that first canoe over the Waitaha. So it's like Maori royalty. He's a cool dude. And he works with greenstone, as you can see, greenstone everywhere there. So what our clients do with him is go for a walk on the river, have a look to see if we can find a bit of greenstone. I used to say that there was a 10% hit rate, but we've been blessed and we're up to about a 40% hit rate historically. Obviously, you have a better chance after there's been rainfall and some of it's been washed down from the mountains. Lots of different types of greenstone. Again, it's something that I could go on about for far too long. I've got some here. This is flower jade. This is a grounding piece which I picked up in Stewart Island. And there's another one from South Westland I've got down here somewhere. I'm not sure if I can get this one out. Okay, so greenstone, really compelling day. On top of that, this guy, Bevan, we've hired him to play music for our clients because he's a very good bluegrass musician, bluegrass guitarist and vocalist, and superb on the blues guitar and banjo. And good on the wild food, but his wild food, he'll often pull out some smoked fish with clients when they're visiting him, and he also restores classic motorcycles. And on one of these motorcycles, he's replaced some of the small parts with greenstone. Pretty cool. So a day with Bevan, again, really enriching down in the South Island. For people who don't have time and who have a heli budget, we can get Bevan to jump into the helicopter and spot greenstone in the wilderness. And there's a couple of boulders that we know which are the size of small cars that he can take people to. And these things are brimming with energy in the middle of nowhere. Amazing things. Okay. Now, this is the last slide. And just to give a few more examples of other Maori we've worked with, there's one up in Marlborough on a quite a rustic old boat, beautiful historic boat, opposite of a gin palace. So for gin palace clients, don't go anywhere near this. For clients who want authentic culture on a boat that was built for the area, which is about 100 years old, yeah, pretty good. Now the guy the captain is a New Zealander, but he's very heavily involved with Maori and what we call on and off the marae the whole time, so on and off into the Maori communities the whole time. So phenomenal, great understanding of history, and his wife is fully Maori and she's phenomenal, beautiful healer and a bird whisperer. So you get up close to birds there in a totally different way in New Zealand. Another one here on Stewart Island I've worked with in the past. She practices miri miri, which is a form of Maori Reiki. And lovely, gentle lady. And she will spend time with our clients on a request if they'd make it down into Stewart Island. This bloke in Auckland, we've got a reggae band here, which is like reggae royalty. And his dad was part of that reggae band. He's part Maori and part Tahitian. And so he brings a bit of that nice island / French flair to what he does. And he tells a story of from then till now. So Maori Wars, there were Maori Wars. Maori were just as bad to each other as Europeans later were to Maori. And through to the colonization process, through to emerging out of the colonization process, the protests, and into the modern day. And he showed me the sacred garden that they built on their community. So it's a garden that's been planted according to sacred geometry. That again is another 30-minute webinar. We're just developing a new one with Tom Laughlin, which I'm going to be talking about with him tomorrow. We've got our first clients trying it in November. The bush in West Auckland, what we call the bush, is actually lush native rainforest, stunning to be in, full of energy, full of smells. And we've got this piece of land which has been developed into a forest farm by this special Danish lady. And we're doing a Maori cooking class there in West Auckland, middle of nowhere. Fantastic. Lovely lady down here in Hawke's Bay who's the only professional fly fisherwoman in the country. She's also Maori. So she has an uncanny ability with fish as well. And Roma Marae, the place where we asked permission to use our name, they've done spiritual healing for us in the past. We sent up 2 psychology professors from Texas. They spent a week there and had a phenomenal time, got really well healed. That's it from me. A lot of this is on the website in much more detail. I'm also available for one-to-ones if you want to explore anything in more detail. Over to you, Dominique.
Thank you very much. Well, you are like unlimited, you have no limit in knowledge. It's fascinating. Huh? You know, I was
yeah.
more thinking about New Zealand because of the sceneries and everything that are famous, but just going for the Maori seems like already you don't need to see something else. And that's
Yep.
places in the world who still have this alive. Huh?
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. There is just so much here. And when people say to us, we've got 10 days and we want to see the whole country and see everything. No, it's just not possible. So we have to choose. So what it actually means for most clients is they will do 1 or 2 Maori days, because there's also the wines here. There's also the food. There's also the sailing. There's also the hiking. There's also everything else to see here. But yeah, we
you know, the healing. Maybe some people have something. They have a health problem. It's always good to have another opinion. And why, I don't know. I think there is a lot of niche, you know,
Oh
cooking,
yes.
and so on. So
Yep.
well, that was really fascinating. Thank you. Let's see what we have. Céline, you said bonjour. Elisa, we said great information, love listening. Yes, Elisa, I would love for AIPARA to be part of Internova Country Partner. That would be wonderful. And Elisa said, thank you, Jean-Michel. I don't see any other comments, but of course, you knew more than anybody, so it's hard to ask a question, huh? On this one. So, yeah, I don't see anything else. I don't know if you have anything to add, Jean-Michel.
You want me to carry on?
No, but I mean, it's a conclusion. I'm going to say goodbye. And before I say goodbye, is there anything else you want to?
Our next webinar, we're going to be talking about wellness in New Zealand, and that's going to be from the normal perceived wellness angle, and also we're talking about spirituality in New Zealand, and a large part of that is from the Maori angle. And at this point, I have to confess that I'm actually I have become a healer myself through the process of investigating a lot of this. And so, I'm pretty hands-on, and that's also why I like to talk to people, because I like to understand why they're coming to New Zealand, and put together exactly what they need for their soul, rather than just a simple 3-dimensional itinerary. So that's our next one, which I will also keep to half an hour.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's I hope it's going to give everyone a lot of idea of what to sell New Zealand for beyond scenery. Before saying it's a lifetime experience, it's definitely much more that even myself I'm discovering.
Yeah.
Well, but that's really nice. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Jean-Michel will be sending you the recording, and hope to see you to the next AIPARA presentation. And tomorrow we're all going to Mamula Island in Montenegro. So thank you, everybody. And thank you again, Jean-Michel, for your time. Have a good day in front of you. And all of us, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Dominique.